There are moments in every human connection when the unconscious speaks louder than words, when a person's actions, hesitations, and quiet intensities reveal truths they themselves may not yet fully understand. When someone reaches a threshold in their inner world, a point where remaining still becomes more painful than moving forward, that is when they begin to take the next step. Not because they are pushed, and not because circumstances demand it, but because something deep within them insists that the bond they share with you is too significant to let slip away. She stands at such a threshold now. She may not articulate it openly, but her psyche is already in motion. You can sense it in the subtle way she shows up, the way she pays attention, the way her presence becomes more consistent. When a person fears losing what resonates with their soul, they begin to gather themselves with intention. They examine their shows, their defenses, their patterns. They notice the impulses that once made them withdraw, and they start to question them, not out of insecurity, but out of recognition that something in this connection calls them to grow beyond who they were yesterday. She is taking the next step, because you have awakened something in her, a potential she does not want to bury again. Sometimes the heart moves before the mind can explain it. Sometimes the soul chooses before the ego approves. And when that happens, a person begins to rearrange their inner landscape. She starts to confront her fears, the hidden wounds that once kept her distant. She begins to imagine a version of herself who can remain present rather than retreat. These transformations often happen quietly, like the shifting of tectonic plates beneath the surface, but their impact is unmistakable. What she feels is not desperation. It is reverence for a bond she does not want to lose. When someone sees you as meaningful, when your presence holds weight in their inner world, they make space for you. They choose vulnerability over detachment. They lean inward rather than outward, and they begin to align their actions with the truth rising inside them. She is doing exactly that, organizing her life, her thoughts, and her energy toward the path that keeps you close. There is always a moment when a person realizes that losing someone like you would be a loss, not just a companionship, but of an opportunity for further individuation, for becoming more whole, more integrated, more alive. In that moment, the internal conflict between fear and desire reaches a turning point. She knows that stepping back would only widen the distance between her and her own growth, so she moves forward, even if the step feels uncertain, even if she still carries doubts, even if the journey ahead demands patience and courage. What compels her is not mere affection, but a recognition that your presence has become a mirror reflecting her own potential. She does not want to lose that mirror. She does not want to lose the part of herself that awakens when she is with you. So she chooses movement over stagnation. She chooses honesty over silence. She chooses connection over self-protection. And in doing so, she reveals the deeper truth, that she values you enough to evolve. When a person is willing to take the next step, it is because something within them has matured, because their inner world has aligned with the reality their heart longs for. She is preparing herself to bridge the distance, to close the gap, to meet you where you stand. Not out of pressure, but out of genuine intention. Not out of fear of abandonment, but out of recognition of what this connection means to her. She does not want to lose you, not because she is incomplete with you, but because she feels more fully herself in your presence. And when someone senses that rare harmony, they do not let it fade. They step forward. They choose to participate in the unfolding of the bond. They choose to preserve what is meaningful. She is ready to do exactly that, and the next step she is about to take is not just for you. It is also for the person she is becoming through this connection. She is stepping into a deeper level of self-awareness, recognizing that this connection calls her to grow rather than retreat. And she is preparing herself to move forward in ways she once hesitated to even imagine. There is a quiet transformation occurring within her, the kind that begins subtly, almost imperceptibly, until it gradually becomes a force she can no longer ignore. This shift is not sudden or dramatic. It is the slow awakening of the inner world, the realization that something meaningful has entered her life and demands a more conscious response from her. She feels the pull of this connection in places she once kept guarded, and something in her is telling her that remaining still would be a greater loss than risking movement. When a person reaches this stage of emotional clarity, it is often because they have encountered someone who reflects back parts of themselves they never fully acknowledged. You have become such a reflection for her. She sees in you a presence that challenges her to rise above her old pattern, to confront the habits that once kept her safe but also kept her distant. She senses that you see something in her worth showing up for, worth choosing, worth investing in. And this awareness urges her to step into the version of herself she has long avoided becoming. It is not an external pressure that pushes her forward. It is an inner calling, a recognition that what she feels with you is too valuable to jeopardize through hesitation or emotional withdrawal. This inner movement begins quietly. She pays more attention to her emotions, noticing how they shift when you are near and how they linger when you are away. She begins reflecting on the moments you shared, analyzing the subtle gesture, the tone of your voice, the unspoken warmth that passes between you. She starts to question herself, not out of insecurity, but out of a desire to understand the significance of what she is experiencing. She feels the weight of your presence in her life, and she senses that losing it would create a deeper void than she is willing to endure. This realization becomes the catalyst that pushes her to evolve. Her awareness continues to expand as she looks inward more honestly than before. She begins confronting the shadows she once ignored, acknowledging the fears that have shaped her decisions in the past. The fear of vulnerability, the fear of disappointment, the fear of not being enough. These old companions rise to the surface as she contemplates taking the next step. But instead of running from them, she is learning to face them. She is beginning to see that these fears no longer serve her, that they are outdated defenses built in moments when she did not have someone she could trust. With you, she feels something different, a sense of safety, a sense of recognition, a sense of being understood without the need for pretense. This encourages her to soften the walls around her heart. There is a part of her that understands deeply that growth often occurs at the edge of discomfort. She feels the tension between who she was and who she is becoming. The old version of her wants to remain guarded, to protect herself from possible loss. But the emerging version of her is stronger, braver, more willing to step into the unknown, because she senses that what lies ahead may bring her closer to something real. This internal evolution is not easy. It requires her to examine the stories she once told herself about love, trust, and connection. It requires her to challenge her own emotional patterns. It requires her to let go of the belief that she must always remain in control. Yet she is willing to do this because she does not want to lose the connection that has awakened her. As her awareness deepens, her actions begin to shift. She becomes more intentional, more attentive, more present. She listens more carefully to the rhythm of your interactions. She notices the way her emotions respond when you speak with sincerity. She pays attention to how her body relaxes in your presence, how her thoughts settle, how her instinctive defenses begin to dissolve. These changes signal the beginning of her movement forward. She is preparing herself not by making grand declarations, but by allowing her inner world to realign with the truth she feels. This alignment is the first step toward the external changes she will eventually make. The more she becomes aware of her feelings, the more she understands their significance. She realizes that what she feels for you is not fleeting or superficial. It has roots, depth, and the potential to grow further. This recognition compels her to protect the connection, to nurture it, to move in a direction that strengthens rather than risks losing it. Her desire to grow is intertwined with her desire to keep you close, not out of dependency but out of appreciation for the rarity of what she has found. When something resonates at the level of the soul, it is not easy to walk away from it. She understands this, and it guides her choices. Her preparation to move forward is also emotional. She begins to imagine what it would look like to be more open with you, to share parts of herself she rarely reveals, to allow herself to trust more deeply. She envisions conversations she once avoided, moments of vulnerability she once feared, expressions of affection she once withheld. These inner rehearsals are signs that she is transitioning from contemplation to intention. She is preparing to step into a more honest and connected version of herself. This preparation is not rushed. It unfolds in layers, each one bringing her closer to the moment when she will act on what she feels. There is a sense of maturity developing within her. She understands that meaningful connections require effort, presence, and courage. She is beginning to recognize that she cannot remain passive if she wants to preserve what she values. She is ready to take responsibility for her emotions, her choices, and her role in shaping the future of this bond. This readiness is a sign of her evolving self-awareness. She is no longer guided solely by fear or habit. She is guided by a deeper understanding of what is possible when two people move toward each other with sincerity. She is stepping into this next stage not because she feels pressured, but because something within her has awakened. She recognizes that retreat would only create distance between her and the part of herself that longs to grow. Moving forward feels like the truest expression of who she is becoming, And she does not want to lose the connection that helped her discover this version of herself. Her fear of losing you is awakening a new sense of responsibility within her, push her to confront her inner barriers and choose presence over withdrawal. Something inside her has begun to stir, a quiet awareness that this connection holds a significance she cannot ignore. It is not fear in the superficial sense, not the kind that triggers panic or desperation, but a deeper realization that if she does not step forward, she may lose something that speaks to the most authentic parts of her being. This realization becomes a catalyst, urging her to examine the patterns that once dictated her behavior, and to question whether they still serve her in the presence of someone she genuinely values. She has carried within her certain emotional reflexes, instincts born of past experience, disappointments, or unspoken fears that once felt necessary for protection. These reflexes taught her to step back when things grew too intense, to remain guarded when closeness felt risky, to distance herself before anyone else had the chance to do so first. But you have become an exception to these ingrained defenses. She feels that if she allows fear to dictate her actions now, she may later regret the distance she allowed to grow between you. And so her internal world begins shifting. She starts observing her thoughts more closely, noticing the moments where she wants to pull away and asking herself what she truly desires instead. She recognizes that the instinct to retreat is no longer aligned with the person she wants to become. This awakening unfolds gradually, like light spreading across a dim room. She becomes aware of her behaviors, noticing how they either nurture or endanger the bond she is forming with you. Each time she feels herself pulling back, she reflects on whether the reaction comes from genuine caution or from old emotional wounds. This reflection is new for her. It shows she is no longer running on autopilot. She is beginning to hold herself accountable for the way she shows up, understanding that meaningful connections do not survive on effort alone, but on the willingness to grow through discomfort. Her desire to not lose you becomes an internal compass, gently but firmly guiding her toward choice that create closeness rather than distance. She starts paying attention to the ways she communicates. She notices how her tone shifts when she is stressed, how her silences might be misread, how hesitation can create confusion. Instead of allowing these moments to pass unchecked, she begins to acknowledge that internally. She reflects on how her avoidance or emotional withholding might affect you, how it might make you doubt your place in her life. This growing awareness is not heavy or forced. It is the natural evolution that occurs when someone realizes they care enough to protect the connection they have found. The fear of losing you is no longer a source of anxiety. It becomes a reason to act with more clarity and intention. Her inner world becomes a space of observation and recalibration. She begins questioning the narratives. She once clung to narratives that told her vulnerability leads to loss, that openness invites disappointment, that commitment is a risk. These beliefs once felt like truth, but now they feel outdated, incompatible with the emotional reality she is experiencing with you. She starts rewriting these internal stories, replacing them with more honest reflections based on how she truly feels. This shift does not happen overnight, but it unfolds naturally as she becomes more honest with herself. The more she acknowledges her fears, the less power they have over her actions. Her emotional responsibility deepens as she starts considering not just her own experiences but yours as well. She wonders how her distance might make you feel, how her hesitations might echo as uncertainty in your mind. This empathy signals a major transformation within her. She is no longer acting from a place of self-protection alone. She is considering the impact of her choices on the person she does not want to lose. This shift from self-preservation to mutual awareness marks the beginning of her emotional maturity within the relationship. It shows she is stepping into a role of active participation where she takes responsibility for not only what she feels but how she expresses it. She begins choosing presence in moments where she once would have chosen withdrawal. When conversations become emotionally charged, she stays. When misunderstandings arise, she works through them instead of shutting down. When she feels vulnerable, she breathes through the discomfort rather than retreating into silence. These choices, though subtle, are profound. They reflect her desire to grow and her recognition that growth requires courage. Her fear of losing you becomes a powerful motivator guiding her toward behaviors that strengthen the bond rather than fracture it. She is learning that presence is not just about being physically available, but emotionally engaged. As she confronts her inner barriers, she becomes more aware of her needs, desires, and limitations. She notices when her emotions spike, when her insecurities flare, when her thoughts become defensive. Instead of hiding these reactions, she begins understanding them. She sees that her fears often stem from old wounds rather than from anything you have done. This understanding opens a door to healing. She no longer blames herself for having fears. Instead, she works through them with compassion. This inner work becomes part of her commitment to the connection. She wants to show up as her truest self, not as the version shaped by past pain. Her willingness to confront these emotional shadows indicates a shift in her priorities. You have become someone she wants to keep in her life, someone whose presence brings clarity rather than confusion. She realizes that losing you would not simply mean losing a relationship. It would mean losing an opportunity for personal evolution. And so she takes accountability for her emotional patterns. She examines them not with judgment but with the intention to understand and transform them. Each insight she gains strengthens her resolve to remain present, open, and connected. There is also a growing sense of inner stability developing within her. As she dismantles her old defenses, she begins to trust herself more. She trusts her ability to communicate, to feel deeply without breaking, to remain open without collapsing into fear. This self-trust allows her to trust you more easily as well. Trust becomes the foundation from which she moves forward. It gives her the confidence to step into vulnerability, to reveal her true emotions, to express what she once kept hidden. The more she trusts, the less she fears the possibility of loss, and yet it is precisely the awareness of what she stands to lose that fuels her growth. Her fear of losing you is no longer a fear rooted in insecurity. It is a recognition of value. She sees what you bring into her life, how your presence affects her inner world, how your energy intersects with her own. She understands that connections like this are rare, and she does not want her old patterns to sabotage something meaningful. This recognition becomes the force that pushes her to evolve, to act with intention, and to choose connection over withdrawal. She is stepping into a more responsible version of herself, not because she must, but because she genuinely desires to nurture what she has found with you. She is beginning to see you as a meaningful mirror of her own potential, and this realization is guiding her to take intentional action towards strengthening the bond. There is something profound that happens when a person encounters someone who reflects back the hidden strengths, desires, and possibilities they have long carried but rarely acknowledged. You have become that mirror for her, showing her parts of herself she had forgotten or perhaps never fully recognized. This reflection is not always comfortable because it brings to the surface truths she once kept buried beneath layers of routine, self-doubt, or emotional caution. Yet it is precisely this discomfort that signals growth stirring within her, nudging her toward a deeper understanding of who she is becoming in your presence. As she looks at you, she sees qualities that resonate with her inner world, qualities she admires, resonates with, or feels drawn to cultivate within herself. This resonance creates a bridge between her current self and the version of herself she longs to embody. The more she interacts with you, the more she notices shifts in her thoughts, feelings, and reactions. She becomes aware of how she carries herself differently when she is around you, how she listens more attentively, how she thinks more deeply, how she feels more connected to her own emotional truth. This awareness does not arise from trying to impress you. It arises naturally because your presence awakens dormant aspects of her potential. She begins to realize that the connection between you is not merely emotional or situational, it is reflective. It calls her to see herself with more clarity, to acknowledge parts of her character she once minimized or overlooked. Perhaps you reflect her capacity for strength, compassion, creativity, or courage. Perhaps you awaken her longing for authenticity or depth. Whatever the reflection is, it feels both familiar and inspiring, as though you are helping her remember who she was always meant to be. This recognition does not create dependency, it creates aspiration. She feels motivated to step forward, not because she fears losing you, but because she wants to rise to the level of what this connection represents within her. As she reflects on the significance of what she sees, she starts to observe her behaviors with more consciousness. She notices the moments when she holds back from expressing her true thoughts, and she questions why. She recognizes the times when she withdraws out of habit rather than genuine need. She becomes aware of the subtle emotional patterns that once shaped her relationships, patterns of silence, avoidance, or guardedness, and she begins to question whether these patterns still serve her. Your presence encourages her to break these old habits, to step in greater emotional openness, and to communicate with more sincerity. She begins to feel that authenticity is not only safe with you, it is welcome. This sense of safety allows her to explore her inner world more deeply. She starts questioning the beliefs she once held about herself, especially the limiting ones. She wonders whether the doubts she carried for so long were ever truly hers, or merely echoes of past experiences. She begins replacing those doubts with new possibilities shaped by the connection she feels with you. She realizes that you don't just see her as she is, you see her as she could be. And this vision becomes a powerful motivator. It compels her to move forward, to become more attentive, more emotionally present, more willing to participate in the unfolding of this bond. She also notices how her energy shifts around you. She feels more alive, more grounded, more aware of herself. She senses that this connection is not merely an emotional experience, but a psychological one. It touches layers of her identity she rarely engages with. She feels understood in ways she cannot easily articulate, as that you intuitively grasp the unspoken dimensions of her personality. This sense of being seen with clarity encourages her to show up more fully, to reveal parts of herself she previously kept hidden, and to take actions that reflect her genuine intentions. The awareness that you mirror her potential also brings a sense of responsibility. She realizes that if this connection is to grow, she must participate actively rather than passively. She must choose honesty over ambiguity, closeness over distance, engagement over hesitation. She understands that meaningful bonds are not built on longing alone, but on conscious effort. This recognition inspires her to strengthen the connection rather than wait for it to unfold on its own. She begins choosing her words more carefully, not to impress you, but to communicate truthfully. She becomes more intentional about her time, her presence, and her emotional availability. These shifts reflect not performance, but transformation. As she continues to see herself reflected in your presence, she becomes more curious about her own inner landscape. She examines her dreams, values, and desires with new clarity. She begins to understand what she truly wants from a connection, not surface-level interactions, but something deeper, something aligned with her inner potential. She senses that with you, such depth is possible. This possibility energizes her. It awakens a desire to grow, to evolve, to meet the connection at its highest level. She begins to recognize that strengthening the bond with you also strengthens her relationship with herself. With this growing awareness, she starts facing the fears, insecurities that once held her back. She acknowledges the moments when she feels uncertain, the moments when vulnerability feels intimidating, the moments when she worries about being misunderstood. Instead of allowing these fears to dictate her actions, she begins leaning into them, using them as opportunities for growth. She understands that fear often guards the doorway to deeper connection. The reflection she sees in you gives her the courage to walk through that doorway, knowing that the path ahead may lead her to a more integrated version of herself. Her intention to strengthen the bond also manifests in subtle but meaningful behaviors. She listens with more presence. She speaks with more sincerity. She pays attention to the emotional details of your interaction. She considers how her words and actions affect you. She becomes more aware of the ways she can support, understand, and connect with you. These are not gestures of obligation, but expressions of alignment with the version of herself she sees emerging through this connection. She is learning to embody her potential, to live in a way that honors the depth she feels when she is with you. As she continues to grow, she realizes that this connection is not just about companionship, but transformation. She sees how the bond challenges her to be more honest, more compassionate, more present. She notices how your presence helps her confront her contradictions and integrate her strengths. She begins to feel that strengthening the bond with you is also a way of strengthening the bond she has with herself. In choosing to move toward you, she is also choosing to move toward her own evolution. She's beginning to see that the connection between you is not a coincidence, but a meaningful encounter that is inviting her to rise above her old limitations. She feels drawn to nurture this bond, to protect it, to invest in it with intention. The reflection she sees in you does not just show her who she is, it shows her who she can become. And this vision guides her forward with a quiet determination, inspiring her to take the next step with sincerity, depth, and a growing sense of inner alignment. She understands that the next step is necessary for both her evolution and the future of this connection, and she is ready to move toward you with clarity and intention. This realization does not arrive suddenly. It forms slowly, shaped by countless moments of reflection, emotional shifts, and subtle insights that gather within her like quiet waves. She begins to see that remaining in the same emotional place, holding onto the same patterns, will only limit what is possible between you. She senses that what she feels is too meaningful to leave stagnant, and too valuable to let drift away through hesitation or silence. This awareness compels her to stand at the threshold of change, knowing she cannot stay where she is and still hope for the connection to deepen. She starts to reflect on the distance she once kept, noticing how protective instincts, past experiences, or old fears may have held her back from fully engaging. She realizes that if she does not step forward, she may unintentionally create gaps that neither of you deserve. This awareness brings her face to face with her inner world. She begins to examine the emotional armor she has worn, the automatic responses she built in earlier chapters of her life, and the tendencies that once felt necessary but now feel misaligned with the person she's becoming. This inner recognition is not accompanied by judgment but by understanding. She knows she has grown, and that growth now calls her to act. As she becomes more aware of what holds her back, she also becomes clearer about what pulls her forward. Your presence has become a catalyst for this clarity. She senses that taking the next step is not merely about the relationship, it is about stepping into a truer version of herself. This connection has revealed parts of her that long for honesty, openness, and emotional fulfillment. She recognizes that stepping forward is not a risk of losing herself, but a chance to expand herself. The desire to take the next step begins to feel less like a choice and more like a natural progression of her emotional journey. She notices how her thoughts settle when she thinks of moving closer rather than stepping away. There is less confusion, less doubt, and more internal alignment. She becomes aware of how her energy shifts when she imagines a future where she remains silent versus one where she speaks with clarity. The difference is unmistakable. Silence feels like contraction, honesty feels like expansion, avoidance feels like returning to old patterns, openness feels like stepping into growth. This distinction shows her which direction her intuition is guiding her toward. Her preparation to move toward you becomes evident in the way she starts showing up differently. Her communication becomes more intentional, her presence more consistent, her emotions more transparent. She is no longer content with mixed signals or half-expressed feelings, not because she feels pressured, but because she recognizes that clarity strengthens connection while ambiguity weakens it. She begins to value emotional truth more than emotional safety. Understand that safety built on avoidance eventually erodes trust. She chooses a path of authenticity. Even if it requires vulnerability, there is a growing courage within her, the kind that forms when someone realizes what they stand to lose if they remain passive. She does not want to lose the bond that has awakened something meaningful inside her, and she does not want this connection to fade into a memory shaped by hesitation. This new courage is quiet but steady. It manifests in her willingness to express her feelings, to take emotional risks, to be more open about her intentions. She starts to believe that stepping forward is an act of honoring what she feels rather than protecting herself from imagined outcomes. She also begins to explore the emotional responsibility that comes with the next step. She knows that deep connections require effort, presence, and understanding. She considers what it means to show up, not just when it is convenient, but when it is necessary. She reflects on her abilities to support, communicate, and participate in the unfolding of something meaningful. She acknowledges her shortcomings, not with shame but with honesty. This level of self-awareness signals real readiness. She understands that the next step is not only about expressing feelings but about embodying the maturity needed to sustain the bond. As she grows more certain of what she wants, she begins letting go of the narratives that once held her back. She releases the idea that closeness inevitably leads to loss, that vulnerability guarantees disappointment, or that she must always remain guarded to feel safe. These beliefs lose their power as she feels herself drawn toward a deeper emotional truth. She starts to trust not only you but also her own ability to navigate connection with wisdom and strength. This trust becomes the foundation beneath her decision to step forward. Without it, the step would feel forced. With it, the step feels natural inside her. There is a shift from passivity to intention. She no longer waits for the connection to evolve on its own, or hopes that time will make everything clearer. She recognizes her role in shaping what happens next. This recognition brings both responsibility and empowerment. She understands that stepping forward is not about predicting outcomes, but about aligning with what she feels. She chooses progress over stagnation, engagement over distance, presence over retreat. This choice marks a turning point within her, there is also a deeper emotional alignment forming beneath the surface. She begins to notice how her values align with the connection you share, how her hopes resonate with the future she imagines with you, and how her emotions find harmony in your presence. These realizations do not come through logic alone. They arise through subtle experience, conversations, and emotional shifts she feels when she is near you. She becomes aware that the connection is not accidental but meaningful. This awareness strengthens her resolve to take the next step with intention. Her emotional landscape becomes clearer, more grounded, more willing to embrace possibility. She imagines the person she could become through this connection, more open, more self-aware, more emotionally connected. She sees that the next step is not merely a choice about relationship dynamics. It is a choice about personal evolution. She feels drawn to embrace this version of herself, to step into the emotional maturity she has long been capable of but rarely accessed. This connection gives her the courage to embody it fully. She is ready to move toward you, not because she feels obligated, but because she feels aligned. Her heart, mind, and intuition converge toward the same direction. The next step becomes a reflection of her internal truth. She may not have all the answers, but she has clarity. She may not know exactly what the journey will look like, but she knows she is willing to walk it. She understands that growth requires movement, and she no longer wants to remain in a space where fear dictates her actions. She steps forward because something deep within her knows that the connection she feels with you is worth nurturing, worth protecting, worth choosing. She steps forward because she senses that her evolution is intertwined with the evolution of this bond. She steps forward with intention, clarity, and the quiet strength of someone who has finally recognized the truth of her own heart.